Alright fellas, we just saw Moses Itauma face off against Dillian Whyte and it certainly lived up to the hype. In a bout between the face of the new generation and a veteran of the old, the people wanted to know, could Moses Itauma once again move up in competition and still manage to perform at the level we have all gotten used to? Yet although many expected a win from Itauma, I don't think many truly expected the sort of dominance he displayed. As well as talking about some of the other action on the card, we need to break down what just happened, and most importantly, where does Itauma go next? Will it be a world title fight? Well, we gotta break it all down. But just quickly, if you don't know, my name's Cloister and I make boxing videos to help keep you informed, so make sure to subscribe and I will always keep you in the loop. Now, this was a bit of an interesting event, another real solid Saudi card which kind of flew under the radar for a lot of us. The main event was one which I personally thought belonged in the UK. Two massive UK names, and it was a bit of a shame the fight wasn't at home for them. But at the same time, I can't criticize it too much because, hey, we're still getting the fight. And it was a fight I was quite excited for. Every time we've seen a Itauma box, it's been straight entertainment. And really, I wasn't expecting anything less from this fight here. It was either going to be a war or someone was going to get knocked out. Although, the one thing that did kind of concern me going into this fight was the talk following Dillian Whyte. Everyone was going, trust us, he's here to actually try and win. Well, you'd hope so, he's the main event of a Saudi pay-per-view. You'd hope he would at least try to win. So that was a bit of a red flag that they just had to keep reaffirming this point. And alongside this, rather than talk about any of his boxing, how he's going to beat Itauma, the main point of him standing a chance was, hey look, he's in great shape. The last time I heard so much talk about how in shape an old fella was Mike Tyson when he fought Jake Paul, and we all know how that ended up. It seems like a bit of a running theme. If a promotion's main point about their fighter who's debatably past it is he looks like he was actually in the gym and he's in decent shape, rather than talking about his boxing, he's probably not at the level he once was. And we saw exactly that tonight. Now, the ring walks for the fight were about 10 times longer than the fight itself. And in seemingly now classic Itauma fashion, he had Whyte out of there in only one round. Itauma came out cautious because they probably didn't know what sort of Dillian Whyte they were getting. But it was clear from the first bell that Father Time had caught up to Whyte. He had no speed and didn't have the feet underneath him to evade Itauma's pressure. So all it took really from Itauma was changing levels a few times, applying a bit of pressure, and instantly Whyte was in deep waters. From there, Itauma was allowed to tee off on Whyte, with Whyte really having no answers to the onslaught, resulting in Whyte going down and then the fight being called off by the ref once he stood up and it seemed like his feet just weren't under him. It was another absolutely dominant display. Debatably, Itauma didn't even take a punch in the fight. In my opinion, this was great matchmaking by Queensberry. Not so much in terms of producing an amazing fight to watch, more so great matchmaking to help further build up Itauma's name. Whyte is a great name for his resume, and at 37 there was little chance that Whyte could potentially turn back the clock. And by winning this fight, of course it reaffirms Itauma's #1 ranking with the WBO, and probably after the Pulev-Hunter fight, it will result in him being #1 with the WBA. He's really in a fantastic position now to be able to challenge for a belt within the next 18 months, and really secure whatever fight he wants next. So as always, the question now turns to what's next, and the first name we have to of course talk about is Oleksandr Usyk. That was the name that kept being said post-fight. Now, it might seem a bit insane the thought of Itauma fighting Usyk next, but it is a reality we might face. What we should see next from Usyk is him fighting Joseph Parker. Parker's beat who he's had to and waited his turn, and he's the interim and the mandatory. Although, as I've said before, I don't think this will happen, basically because it isn't a money fight. The Saudis have already said they aren't going to fund it, and for Usyk with only a few fights left, he seemingly wants to make the fights that make the most noise. Either Fury, Joshua, or whatever fight comes along with the biggest bag. And what could be next for Usyk might just include Itauma. Now, Turkey is a big fan of the youngster, and the Ring magazine is already reporting that's what they want to make next. If it does miraculously happen, it probably wouldn't be for Undisputed though, as Parker is the interim belt holder and the mandatory. If Usyk were to fight Itauma, he probably would be stripped of his WBO belt. And honestly, I think there's probably a 50-50 chance of this actually happening next. But do I think Itauma's ready for this fight? Well, to put it simply, no. The fella, although massively impressive, really hasn't been tested or even hit with a real solid punch. So putting a bloke who is still largely untested against a fighter who will drag him into deep waters and has the speed and power to really challenge him might be a challenge too large. At the end of the day, styles make fights. Itauma's speed of movement has been incredibly effective, but it's been effective against the big men who he's fought, who are slow and are basically glorified human punching bags. You put him against a guy who is more technically skilled than him and will fight at least at the same pace as him, he's probably gonna be in a world of trouble. For the sake of his future career, I hope this isn't next. I hope they wait out Usyk to retire within the next 12 to 18 months and then start collecting the scattered belts. Because although a loss against Usyk wouldn't end his career, it would certainly end the hype train which is building. And of course, a win would elevate him to another level, but simply I think there's easier paths there. A fight I would love to see next would be Anthony Joshua versus Itauma. If you talk about fights to raise Itauma's profile, that's the biggest one he could possibly get. Joshua is still one of the biggest commercial names within the sport. No matter who fights Joshua, it's a worldwide spectacle. And that's why you have people like Jake Paul trying to fight him. Because although Paul gets smashed to bits, he's still one of the biggest names he could pull. For Itauma, this is a dangerous fight, but it's the right fight stylistically. Although it just will never happen. And why won't it happen? Well, that's because Itauma's trainer is also Joshua's trainer. So for the fight to happen, one fighter would have to leave Ben Davison. And I just don't think that's in the plans for either fighter. And on top of that, so much of the current heavyweight crop is signed with Queensberry. So to make a fight with really the only major name which isn't, makes it seem even further less likely and harder to happen. So does this ever happen? Sadly, I don't think so. In reality, what I hope to see next for Itauma is another fight like this one here, and a name which would fit the bill would be Deontay Wilder. And although he's incredibly washed, Wilder would be seen as another step up for Itauma. Another huge name for the resume, and it would help to further build up his profile internationally. Wilder is a free agent and he's looking for a big fight. And Itauma wants another fight this year. It would be a good Saudi card headliner. A fight like this would just make sense. I just hope to see Itauma get a few more fights under his belts before a truly big challenge, but I guess only time will tell what's next. And what's next for Dillian Whyte? It should be pretty simple. Honestly, he should retire. At 37, it's clear his best days are far behind him. If he continues to fight, it will honestly end up just being more of what we just saw. And for his legacy, I hope not to see a repeat anytime soon. You have to respect his determination to take this tough challenge, but from here, I think it's time for him to call it a day. Additionally, it's worth to note alongside this main event, the co-main was also a pretty good bout too. It was between Nick Ball and Sam Goodman, which was basically the bout of the two guys who think they can beat Inoue, but in reality neither could. Ball ended up getting the decision here, and although I thought he won, the scorecards were a bit wide. But what I hope to see next from him is a true challenge against fighters such as Espinoza, Fulton or Carrington. Any of these fights would be bangers, but will any of those fights happen? I doubt it. It seems like they're waiting for that potential Inoue fight down the line once Inoue moves up. They're doing that because it's clear that's where the money lies. And with Inoue seemingly not moving up until after a potential Nakatani fight, that move up that Ball is waiting for still could be 12 to 18 months down the line. So in the meanwhile, I hope he tries to unify, although for some reason I think that won't happen, but I guess only time will tell. But now I want to hear your thoughts on this card, your thoughts on Itauma's performance, and what do you think is next for everyone involved? Let me know your thoughts on this event down in the comments. Now, if you did enjoy the video, please make sure to like and subscribe, it really does a ton to help the channel. Yeah, thanks for watching fellas, and I'll catch you in the next one.